Good. Welcome to the board meeting. Today is January 23rd, 2020. This is the board meeting for the Utah Board of Water Resources. Would like to note that two of our board members are absent today. Randy Crozier is not able to be with us. He did participate over the phone on our briefing meeting, but he's not able to on this meeting. And Juliet Tennert is not able to be with us today either. But we welcome those of you who are with us today. First item that we're going to take care of just a little bit is my name is Blaine Ipson, and it is my opportunity this year to be chairman of this Board of Water Resources, and I've enjoyed my time I've served thus far on this board. There's some great staff members, great board members. Our past president, Norm Johnson, past chair, Norm Johnson, we're going to present him with his own little gavel for being, and Norm's a whole lot more relaxed today than he has been in the past. Would also like to recognize that some changes have taken place in the Division of Water Resources since our last board meeting. Eric Millis retired. Todd Adams was the deputy director of the Division of Water Resources. Todd has been appointed as the director now of the Division of Water Resources, and we're really looking forward to working with Todd. We've worked closely with Todd in the past, and I'm excited to have him as the director. And then the deputy director is Candace. And Candace, would you like to stand up and wave? Candace will be the deputy director of the Division of Water Resources. So anyway, we welcome you today. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. All of the board members indicated in our briefing meeting they've had a chance to look at the minutes. Any further discussions or questions on the minutes?
I'd make the motion, Mr. Chairman, that we approve the minutes.
Okay,
I'll second.
Jim's made a motion that we approve it. Norm has seconded it. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the NRCS snow report, and we've got with us today Jordan Clayton and Dave Erickson. We welcome both of you today, so we'll have a report on our snow report.
All right, well, thank you for having me this morning. Again, we wanted to give an update about how our snowpack is looking this morning, and I'll provide an overview of our current conditions and also some speculations about where things might go from here forward. Let's see if this will advance. There we go. All right, so this is the outline of where we're going. Just as a quick reminder, I think the folks in this room already know this, but obviously the vast majority of the water that we use in Utah comes from snow, which underscores the importance of these kinds of updates. And I think everybody in the room is familiar with our SNOTEL sites, but I just wanted to put up a quick reminder that this is an automated system that gives us hourly data from over 130 sites in Utah. And each one of these measures the snow water equivalent, snow depth, precipitation, air temperature, and also soil moisture and temperature. Like I mentioned, we have over 130 sites just in Utah. We're very well equipped to quantify the snowpack. So how are things going right now? These data were current as of yesterday morning. Statewide, this is what the basins look like in the state of Utah right now, where we have the dark blue colors. That's where we're above 150% of average. Obviously, the southern portion of the state is doing exceptionally well. Everywhere in Utah is over 100% in terms of its snowpack for this time of year. I show these kinds of graphs at all the presentations that I give, so you probably already heard my spiel about these, but just as a reminder, the black line on this graph shows us our current conditions for the 2020 water year. The green line, those are average conditions. And then you see with the different rainbow shading, this is the different percentiles that we've seen over the observations back to 1978. And so you can see we're pushing into around the 70th percentile for this time of year. Statewide, we're at about 123% of normal, and we have roughly 70 days until we would hit our typical peak snowpack. So we're doing quite well. I checked again this morning, and the number is still 123%, so that is a current value. For comparison, I plotted also last year and the year before on this graph, so you can see we're actually doing a little bit better than we were last year at this time, which is that kind of brownish, greenish line just below the black one for the current conditions. And of course, much, much better than we did in 2018, where we had an abysmal snow year. Of course, last year we really had a large snow accumulation contribution in February and March, and so you can see last year really jump up in about 2 weeks from this date. So we'll see if we get that same kind of pattern this year. We can't count on that, but at least right now we're doing a little bit better than we were last year at this time. We also want to consider the precipitation. This is an aggregation of the liquid precipitation and also the snow that falls at our SNOTEL sites. A little bit lower in terms of precipitation because we got off to a slow start. Our water year starts on October 1st, and we got off to a little bit of a slow start, and then things have picked up since then. So all of our major basins in Utah are either just below 100% or a little bit above 100% in southern Utah. It's nice to see a lot of green and blue on these graphs. Same kind of graph for precipitation. The black line there is our current water year, just under 100% for our statewide precipitation. You can see we're a little behind where we were last year in terms of precipitation, and then again, well above 2018 totals. If you look at the black line, you can see why we're a little bit under 100%. It really starts off slow, and it's below the average line for quite a bit until we get into late November, where it really jumps up from a series of quite large storms. These are the snow depth values across the state. Most of the state is currently around 30 to 50 inches of snowpack at this point in terms of absolute snowpack depths. Some areas of the state up by the Logan headwaters are a little bit higher, up into the 70s and 80 inches. Also along the Wasatch Front, we have some deeper snowpack totals, but generally we're looking at 30 to around 50 inches of snowpack throughout the state. So once we have snow water equivalent and snow depth information, we can calculate snow density. And I mentioned this at the Uinta meeting a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to mention it again. The snow densities are a little high for this time of year, which is a little bit concerning. We don't like to see snow densities that are in the upper 20s to low 30 percentages for this time of year, because that's typically more of a late spring or early spring type of snow density. Right now, we would want our snow densities to be more in the low 20 percentile or even upper teens. The fact that we have had some kind of warmer precipitation and a little bit of a mix of rain and snow has caused these densities to be a little higher than they would normally be for this time of year. And the reason why that's concerning is that it's going to then take a little bit less energy to start to ripen and melt that snowpack once the temperatures start to warm. So we'll keep an eye on that, and I'll talk about that more at the March meeting to see how things are looking at that time. Reservoirs are doing quite well. What's shown on the left side here are the reservoirs last year in green, and the current conditions are shown in blue. This is current as of January 1st. You can see all of the major basins have shown improvement. Obviously, that's due to last year's outstanding snowpack and the ability to carry some of that over in our storage. Borrowing from the Bureau of Reclamation, who published these really, I think, convenient bathtub type diagrams, this shows with their network of reservoirs what things look like in terms of percent full for a number of different basins. We've got the Bear, Weber, and Provo on the left, Uinta on the right. I don't want to fly through these too quickly. I can come back if there are questions, come back to any of these slides. Upper Colorado on the left, and then the Price, San Rafael on the right there. And a generally positive reservoir conditions, possible exception of some larger ones like Lake Powell, which is still only about 51% full. Stream flows, this is from the U.S. Geological Survey. They do publish this interesting graph, which I included on the right. I haven't included these kinds of graphs before. This is an average stream flow index, which is just an index of, for all the streams in Utah, how things are relative to normal for this time of year. And you can see we've been hovering just a little bit wetter than normal for the last couple months. Utah is actually doing the best of any state in the West right now in terms of its snowpack. I circled the number for Utah, 125% of normal, which is within a couple values of the 123% that I had in my other graph. There's some discrepancy there, but that's close enough. Anyway, that puts us at the top with Arizona in terms of percent normal for this time of year. We're doing quite well. We don't want to get too carried away. I warned you about getting plowed. Just a silly joke. Anyway, we don't want to get too carried away. Let's look at what might be coming down the pipe. So outlook for this winter. We also have these projection graphs, and I do show these at our meetings as well, so you've heard my spiel on these as well, but I just wanted to remind, what's shown here are the range of possible outcomes that we've seen from our observations going back to 1978. And the middle of these is the most likely. So the middle green line is the one that is the 50% projection. That's the most likely outcome, but you can see obviously we have a range of potential outcomes from the best, shown in the sort of dark purple, to the worst, which would be the red line that hovers towards the bottom of the diagram. If we continue along the path that we're on right now, we're going to end up at around the 70th percentile overall for this given snowpack, and which would be, again, a well above average, roughly 120% type snowpack if we continue on the same path for the rest of the winter. It might be more useful to look at these regionally, so I broke down these graphs based on the portion of Utah, northern Utah, and the next slide it will show selected basins from southern Utah. So we've got the Bear on the upper left, Weber-Ogden upper right, northeastern Uintas bottom left, and Duchesne bottom right. The northeast Uintas are doing outstandingly well. Projections even include some potential to be outside of what we've seen in our observations. But even if they continue with sort of normal snowpack from here forward, we're going to be above the 70th percentile in that area. Not so much for the Weber or for the Bear. There we're hovering right around average if we have average snowpack moving forward. For southern Utah, we have the Price, San Rafael, the Upper Sevier, Upper Virgin, and southeastern Utah moving through the different diagrams. And you can see we started off really quite well for all these southern Utah basins, and things have kind of flattened out for those. We're hoping to get some more snowpack later this storm cycle. We'll see how that goes. So, of course, we use our snowpack to forecast our water supply conditions and to forecast runoff for April to July. We do this as a volume. We don't try to forecast peak discharge or anything like that, but we just forecast a total volume of water that's going to be delivered at all these streamflow forecast points for April through July. And based on the January 1st numbers, we have kind of a break in the state where we have, for northern Utah and sort of central Utah, around average runoff forecasted. That's around 100% or slightly below. And then once you get into the the severe headwaters and the virgin headwaters in the southwestern portion of the state, we get into the 125 or even 150% of normal type runoff that's expected. And I'll comment on why these numbers are a little bit lower than we might have anticipated in just a second. This is another way of displaying the same thing. What's shown here are the individual forecast points for the upper severe. And the middle value that's shown there with the numbers, that's the 50% forecast, so that's the most likely forecast in terms of thousands of acre feet. And then that gray line that's vertical, that's average conditions. So, for example, if we look at the top one, Mammoth Creek near Hatch, the forecasted value, the most likely value is 40,000 acre feet of water. And that's well above average because the average line runs kind of through the red portion of that rainbow. All right, so you can see that for the upper severe, all the forecasts are well above normal, and you can see the absolute values that are forecasted on this graph. The opposite is shown for the Weber-Ogden. Here you see all the 50% forecasts are just below the average line. You can see the individual values for all those locations on the Weber-Ogden on the graph. We do have all those values printed in our water supply outlook report, so if I'm going too fast, I can guide you in that direction at the end of the report. So why are those forecasts a little lower than we might have expected? Well, the soil moisture coming into our snow accumulation season was pretty dry, and it's going to continue to be pretty dry underneath the snowpack. We don't typically see that rebound during the snow year. And so what's shown on the right side here is the soil moisture green on there is average, and this is a statewide graph. We can see with the black line that we're a little bit below average. Because of the really dry conditions that we experienced last summer and the lack of precipitation really over the summer into the fall, we do forecast, we do need the snowpack to be well above average to end up with roughly average conditions in our runoff, particularly for northern Utah and central Utah, which is why the forecasts are actually a little bit more conservative than they would normally be based on those snowpack numbers. We do know that we can improve our forecast by using soil moisture data. Here's some experimental results showing with an average at the bottom that we can improve all those different forecast points by about 7% on average if we use soil moisture, and we're working on making those types of improvements to our quantitative forecast within the NRCS. That's a project that's moving forward. But the reason I show this slide is just to reiterate the kind of obvious fact that drier soils lead to reduced forecasts, which is intuitive, and vice versa. We're starting to be able to quantify that a little bit more closely at this point. Anyway, what we do with our forecast is that we develop these surface water supply indices, and what that does is it combines the forecasted flow for a given basin with the reservoir conditions in that basin. So we have an overall forecast of how well our surface water systems will do for each basin. And those numbers are really positive. We have good reservoir storage moving forward, and our forecasts are still looking pretty encouraging. When you combine those values, you can see it from a percentile perspective, how well those different surface water supply indexes look relative to previous years that they've been observed. The ones that really stand out on this graph are the Bear, the Upper Sevier, and the Virgin River as having a particularly high surface water supply index from here forward. Here's an example of what one of these would look like. This is for the Upper Sevier, where the green on there is the volume shown over those periods of years. The green is the volume of anticipated runoff based on our forecasts, and the blue is the reservoir storage portion of that graph in terms of thousands of acre feet. Anyway, we published all those graphs and surface water supply indices and forecast values in our water supply outlook reports. We just published one on January 1st. We'll have another one coming out every month for the rest of the snowpack season. Of course, you can obtain those on our webpage, or you can just email me and I'll send them to you directly. What does NOAA say about what's going to happen from here forward? These are 3-month outlooks based on January 16th data. It looks like on the left side that we really have no idea when it comes to precipitation. There's equal chance of it either going up or down based on NOAA's projections. And NOAA is projecting warmer than normal conditions for Utah in terms of temperatures. The seasonal drought outlook just came out also on the 16th, and it's showing a drought persists label for most of the state of Utah. Again, this is from NOAA. That's all the slides that I have. I'm happy to answer questions or follow up after the meeting, whichever you prefer. Thank you very much.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Next item on our agenda we'll go into the feasibility reports. First off, we have project RE 431, Henefer Town. So if those who are here for Henefer, please come up. Welcome, and we have Kay Richens, Mayor of Henefer. Welcome, Kay. And we have Brian Dieter from JUB Engineering. Welcome. And Russell, we'll have you start the presentation off.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Okay, the applicant serves culinary water to 260 connections in the town of Henefer in Summit County. Water is supplied by the Franklin and Bachelor Springs, producing about 373 gallons per minute, and storage is held in 4 tanks with a total of 575,000 gallons. The system is rated approved by the State Division of Drinking Water. Agricultural water is also supplied by Franklin and Bachelor Springs, irrigating almost 1,160 acres of cropland. Because the area has an impenetrable clay layer at ground level and the alluvial aquifer is relatively small, culinary wells only produce about 40 gallons per minute no matter how deep they are drilled. This limits options for future supplies of culinary water. The culinary system should be considered at capacity with current supplies. Storage capacity is also borderline when lawns and gardens are watered with culinary supplies. Also, the 2 agricultural ditches in town have had seepage issues, and there have been a few home flooding events, mostly caused by gophers digging holes in the ditch banks. The applicant has issued a new connection moratorium the last 2 years. No new connections will be allowed on the culinary system until the culinary supply can be increased or the demand reduced. In order to conserve culinary water for future growth, the applicant plans to install a pressurized and metered secondary water system throughout the town and line 2 large sections of the Henefer irrigation canals, the main ditch, at approximately 4,000 feet, and the big ditch at 3,600 feet that will be lined. Pipe in sizes from 4 to 10 inches will be installed, and a small head pond and pump station will also be constructed. Here's a few photos of the town. Again, Henefer is a small town with lots of new growth. And here's some of the ditches in town. You can see a lot of seepage, a lot of weeds and lawns that are sucking up water there. This is the main ditch. And this on the hillside, this is the big ditch. And this is kind of where the pond is looking to be, a 3-acre-foot head pond is going to be located. Okay, benefits of construction of a secondary lawn and garden system will conserve up to an estimated 116 acre-feet of seepage losses of culinary water. Lining 7,600 feet of the ditches will also save about 918 acre-feet of agricultural water. Safety issues from the unlined canals flooding will also be addressed. As shown, the cost is estimated at $3,260,000. The recommended cost sharing and repayment are the Board of Water Resources providing $1,496,000, a Water Smart grant of $1,500,000, and the applicant providing $264,000. And the Water Smart grant has been awarded, but an environmental assessment needs to be completed before funds can be finalized. Staff recommends the board authorize 45.9% of the project cost, up to $1,496,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $88,000, including reserves. And that is staff's report.
Thank you, Russell. Would you gentlemen, either of you, like to give any comments or observations on this project? Anything you'd like to say?
Yes, I was wondering if the board, with regards to the repayment of this, if the board would entertain a request to extend the payment from 1% for 20 years to 1% for 25 years.
And 1% in 25 years would be a payment of approximately $72,000?
Mayor, would you go ahead and explain maybe what the impact of that would or would not have with that reduction? Or I mean, the extension of the repayment time?
Yes, the reasons for that, obviously, we don't have a, well, the inhabitants there there'll be a 35% or $35 increase in their water bill, which will kind of be a shock to them at first, but they'll get used to it. They'll enjoy having the secondary system. The other thing is that, is with this system, currently, we do not have any full-time employees. When repairs have to be made, it's the city council that fixes the water leaks. We crawl in the manholes and take care of all of that. With this new water system, we're looking at hiring a full-time employee. If we lower the rates, the payback time frame just a little bit, that would free up money to help us pay for a full-time employee to maintain the system, and other things need to be done in town. Also, we're like I say, a small town, not a lot of money, but we do have sewer upgrades that we're looking at here in the future. And also some culinary water improvements in the future as well. So that would help us immensely and would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Russ has presented the project well. I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay. With that, board, what comments or questions will
Mr. Chairman? Well, go ahead, Kyle.
I just had one other question relative to, you indicated, well, and first of all, I need to state, this is where I grew up in Henefer. I don't have a conflict of interest. I haven't lived there for 50 years, so I think I'm good that way. Can't say that there aren't some relatives there that, because everyone in Henefer is related one way or another, pretty close. But anyway, you indicated in the feasibility report that you've had to place a new construction moratorium for the last 2 years because you have not had the ability for new connections. What impact, excuse me, what impact has that had on, local residents and potential development?
It has had a big impact on us, as there's a lot of young people that they would like to build and they would like to stay in our community, but because we have this moratorium on, they're not able to. They're having to go to other communities or to the cities to find a place to live. And I hate to see our young people being our #1 export in our community. We would like to have them stay and be part of the community and raise their families there as well.
Have any idea how many new residents, new homes could be built with this project being completed?
Yeah,
We have the numbers here.
Give me a sec. We just did a culinary water, we did a water master plan for them last year. This would, I can tell you, based on the growth rates that were projected by the county, this would allow them to continue with just those 2 existing culinary water sources for the next 40 years.
So new construction would also be able, would come in and help pay for the system as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just, maybe I'm going to ask the same question Wayne just did, but I was wondering what Henefer's population is now and what are you anticipating in growth?
You've got the numbers right there.
Somewhere in here, I've got their population. In the 2018 estimate was 923.
Okay, well, that's about the size of the town I live in. But I was just wondering if there will be, if you'll assess impact fees as people come on to the secondary water system, or if this will just take care of existing shareholders.
No, I mean, there's adequate shares, and the system is sized for growth. how the city handles that, I'm assuming there will be a connection fee and impact
There will
fees
be,
charged.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussions from the board?
My question would be for you, what the request for a change from 20 to 25 years, what, does that still fit within parameters and stuff, or how do you feel about that?
Well, at a payment of $72,000, that would reduce their monthly costs about $5 a month. So they'd be a little bit below the affordability guideline, a couple of dollars below the affordability guideline, about $4 below. Still at about $72, $73 a month. So.
Any other questions? Well, with that, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, and I would like to make the following motion, that the board authorize 45.9% of the project cost up to $1,496,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 25 years, with annual payments of approximately $72,000, including reserves.
Got a motion, is there a second? Second. Wayne seconded. Is there any further discussion on this motion? With that then, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
We'll now move on to committal of funds. First project that we'll discuss is project RE415. It is Blanding City. From Blanding City, we've got Jeremy Red, City Mayor. And we have Kason Schertz, Project Engineer. Welcome. And Ben will be, from staff, will be presenting.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In its December 2018 meeting, the Board of Water Resources authorized a stormwater control project for the city of Blanding. The proposed project is designed to eliminate flooding that's frequently experienced in late spring to early summer. Flooding throughout the city, not throughout the city, but in several locations in the town is due to a significantly undersized storm sewer system. The proposed project includes the installation of approximately 5,600 feet of pipe ranging from 18 to 36 inches. It also includes the necessary manholes, inlet boxes, and connections to the existing storm drain system. The original plan was to install reinforced concrete pipe, but after consideration of the project, the applicant has decided to consider both reinforced concrete and HDPE pipe. It'll be one or the other. The pipe material chosen for the project will be selected according to project bids that come in. The current cost estimate, which differs slightly from what was authorized, reflects more complete construction plans and also contemporary project bids that have been reviewed. Staff recommends that the board commit 84.8% of the project cost, up to $1,700,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 30 years, with annual payments of approximately $68,000, including reserves. This is staff's report.
Thank you, Ben. Mayor, any comments?
Well, I don't know if it's a promotion. I'm the city manager, so I don't want to.
City manager. Oh,
I don't want to pretend to be an elected official.
Let's have you be the mayor.
No, we don't have any comments. I appreciate Ben's help on this project. He's been very helpful. I think that the numbers that you have before you represent a good project and something that we can get done this spring and summer. So we're ready for the funds. Thank you.
Jason?
No, I'm just here to answer any questions you might have about the project.
Okay, with that, from the board, do you have any questions?
I just had a question. You answered it for me personally earlier, but when are your bids going out? When will they be expected in on the pipe?
So they'll come back in the middle of February, and we should be able to make decisions from there. So being so remote, we can get varying pricing depending on who's willing to come do the project, if we can get some interest in southeastern Utah. So we're hoping for good bids. That's why we've waited till this point in time. It's usually when we get our best pricing, so we're crossing our fingers we get good bids.
Are the bids to be delivered on site or
Yes.
to the community?
Yes.
Transportation is a big issue there, so.
Any other questions? I guess I would give just an observation. Blanding is a little bit off the track. My daughter is the new math teacher down there at San Juan High School, and she really enjoys the area down there, she and her little family, so.
Yeah, it's a great place to live. It's just everything else is too far away from us. So it's a great place.
It's a long ways for me, that's for sure. Any other further discussion? That then will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman. I'd recommend the board commit 84.8% of the project cost up to $1.7 million, and that bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $68,000, including reserves.
Got a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Jim seconds. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, with that, we'll vote on it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, we'll continue on with the committal of funds, project RL 586 for Pleasant Grove City. And with this, we have Aaron Spencer, staff engineer, and we have Matt Dugdale, director. Welcome. And Shanae is going to present.
Good morning. Yes, Marisa had to step out.
Shailene. Shanae.
So the board authorized this project for Pleasant Grove City in its October meeting. Since then, the design has been completed and one of the filtering stations has been removed from the design, as well as the bids came in lower than the cost estimate. So today, we're actually asking to commit funds less than what was authorized. So, excuse me. So the proposed cost sharing remains the same percentages, 72% and 28% for the city. But staff recommends that the board commit funds 72% of the project cost up to $1,048,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $50,000, including reserves.
Thank you. Matt or Aaron, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Not too much. I think she hit the main points, is that as we went along, like, we pulled out one of the filter stations we felt didn't provide as much benefit, and we had a particularly low bid, but we know the contractor really well, so we know we can work with them. And so we just tried to be conservative in our estimates, I guess, and so it's nice to end up on the low end of where you were, so.
Let me take a prerogative. Welcome back, Aaron. Aaron was on our staff for a little bit, so it's good to see you once again.
Thank you.
Does it feel like you guys have been running a marathon the last couple of weeks, trying to get all the details worked out because of the changes?
Well, yes, and still running, but yes.
It was a really long sprint the last couple of days is what happened.
Yes. We appreciate the staff working with us, so.
Okay, thank you. From the board, do you have any questions for them at all? Discussion? Okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion then.
Okay. I move the board commit 72% of the updated project cost up to $1,048,000 and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $50,000, including reserves.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any question on the motion? Okay, would all in favor of this motion indicate?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Congratulations. Good
Yeah,
luck.
we're done.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, we have a special item. It's project RE 420. It is Bear River Canal Company. If you'll come up. And we have Curtis Marble, President. We have Trevor Nilsson, General Manager. Welcome, Trevor. Trevor's from where I come from, where I am, so know Trevor well. And Brian Dieter from JUB back with us again. Welcome. And Ben will be giving the presentation.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Bear River Canal Company, working in association with the Board of Water Resources, successfully completed a project to line approximately 7,900 feet of canal with EPDM liner. This project was implemented with the assistance of the board and a WaterSmart grant and has provided many benefits to the applicant. Since the project was completed, the applicant has been awarded a $250,000 water efficiency grant from the Utah Department of Agriculture, and these funds will make it possible for the applicant to install additional EPDM liner and a pipe. The applicant is requesting funds from the board to aid them in meeting their cost share required by the grant. The proposed project includes the installation of 5,200 feet of EPDM liner and 400 feet of culvert. Both the liner and culvert will be installed in areas that have been identified where concentrated seepage occurs and potentially destabilizes the slope below the canal. This section of the pipe, this previous section is where the EPDM liner will go in. That's north of Deweyville. This section is where the pipe will go in, and it's located south of Deweyville, right above Crystal Hot Springs. Reducing seepage will decrease the likelihood of slope failure. This will not only conserve water, but secure the water source for those downstream and reduce the risk borne by the applicant. The section of canal to be piped is located right above Crystal Hot Springs, which is frequented by many visitors throughout the year. You can see the numbers there in the table. Staff recommends that the board commit an additional $292,000 and amend the purchase agreement to state that the board will provide 50.1% of the project cost up to $671,000 and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $44,700.
Thank you, Ben. Curtis or Trevor or Brian, do you have any additional things you'd like to add to that?
Just that with the original application that this loan started with, it was about getting water to the end of this particular canal so that those farmers could effectively produce throughout the year. And with the liners that have gone in, and then we fill with this one as the capstone, we will be able to meet that commitment. And we are already seeing a drastically increased delivery based on measurements taken this year. So the money is being put to great use. The current extension over the life of the project, we're looking at the state's portion of this, the return on it is about $2.50 an acre foot, give or take a couple cents. So this is a very effective project for making those state dollars stretch as far as they can. This is a low-hanging fruit, and we really would like to go ahead and get this done and kind of be the last of the a capstone project for this larger effort that we've made in this particular canal.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. From the board, do we have any questions for them? Charles?
Mr. Chairman, in our briefing meeting, we had some discussion on the funding from Utah Department of Ag. Is this the new funding from Department of Ag?
Yes, and as a clarification, the funding has not been officially awarded yet, but we were told very unofficially that we have ranked out, and they had some documentation, clarification items that come with grants that they wanted. But we are anticipating that we will hear on that on Friday, so tomorrow, officially, if we've got that grant money. So again, it's not official, but we do anticipate to receive that funding.
What's the plan if you don't get it?
Given the financial position of the canal company, we don't feel that we would be able to do the entire project now. We would need to reevaluate. The project, given the cost, is quite a strong candidate, and that's why we haven't necessarily looked at that contingency as greatly as we thought we would. I mean, the project ranked quite high amongst all the other projects, and so, like I said, we do anticipate to get it, but we will not be proceeding this year if we don't receive that grant.
Any other questions?
I'm just a little curious about the seepage around the springs. Is that going to have a bearing on future operation of the springs?
If you could flip back to the picture. So you can see right where the arrow that says the concentrated seepage location that's on top of the pipeline, you'll see that there's a green patch that goes down right there. This is all surface water problems. So the water's coming out of the canal. I lined it with clay 5 times this year, and every time the clay just picks up and moves. And so we needed to do something different. This is also a high-risk zone for in our canal safety management plan. So it's an area we were looking at doing something different. But given, I mean, if we were to breach there, the cost would be in the millions. And so, or the damages would be in the millions to this resort. So that's the reason we went with pipe. As far as its effect on the spring itself, this is a very minimal,
Water loss.
it's not going to affect the springs. The spring sources are from other locations and is affected by the macro canal, but you can see we're only doing about 500 feet through this area that we can't seem to seal up with other liners.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, and as Trevor pointed out, with Crystal Hot Springs right there, and it's quite a safety issue for the protection of human life with the hundreds of people that visit there, especially on weekends, but almost daily. It's a very popular resort.
Okay, thank you. And Charles, I believe.
Yeah, one other comment. I need to recuse myself on voting or making a motion on this, as I'm a shareholder in Bear River Canal Company, and it would present a conflict of interest for me, so I'll step back.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll entertain a motion on this project.
I would make a motion that the board commit an additional $292,000 and amend the purchase agreement to the state the board will provide 50.1% of the project cost up to $671,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $44,700.
Okay, Jim made a motion, Norm seconded it. Any further discussion or question on the motion? Okay, we'll have a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries. Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, we'd like to welcome Justin Atkinson, who's project engineering with Sunrise Engineering, with us today. Welcome, Justin. We've received a couple new applications. We won't go over those today. Just so you're aware, we have received an application from Davis and Weber County's Canal Company and West Cache Irrigation Company. These applications will be being evaluated over the next course of time. The next item we're going to go to on our agenda is we're going to have a report on the Lake Powell pipeline report. Joel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm happy to give you an update on where we're at with Lake Powell Pipeline. We recently held, or the Bureau of Reclamation held 3 public scoping meetings, which we were able to attend in Canal, St. George, and South Jordan. This was on January 7th, 8th, and 9th. There was pretty good attendance from the public at all 3 meetings, and over 1,100 comments were received over that 30-day comment period. Some of those were received at the meetings. They had the ability to leave written comments as well as recorded comments at those meetings. Bureau of Reclamation has informed us that about 85% of those comments were form letters, essentially the same content, just different signatures. But they are reviewing those comments as they prepare the environmental impact statement. They are working hard. I know they've been working evenings and weekends and holidays, trying to keep with the schedule that they have for this. They plan to release a draft environmental impact statement this summer, and that the final environmental impact statement and even records of decision could be about this time next year if they're able to stay on the schedule, which is an aggressive schedule. But they are working hard, and it's neat to see the way that the agencies are coordinating together with all the cooperating agencies on this project. Following records of decision, we would anticipate up to 2 years of design work, and then following that 4 to 6 years of construction. So we're still looking at an anticipated water delivery beginning between 2028 and 2030. An update on where we're at with our Stantec contract. The total contract amount is over $39 million, 39.4. We have spent to date 36.1, with leaving a remaining amount of about 3.3 million, which the contract does expire at the end of this year, and December 31st. And because we know that the work will continue into January, we will be talking towards the end of this year about extending that for at least for time. But this budget, we're hoping will get us through the end of the work that we need to do. But we'll be watching that. We continue to meet with the Kaibab tribe on this project and have some meetings set up, and we'll continue to coordinate with them. One other thing I would like to mention is we are getting close to filing our water rights change application, and what that would do is change the point of diversion. The right that the board holds now would come out of Flaming Gorge Reservoir, and the change application it'd still have the same point of diversion, and then it would flow down the Green River and be rediverted at Lake Powell. And so the application would be for a point of rediversion. We will keep you updated on how that goes. The other item would be, because of all the additional work that Bureau of Reclamation is doing, the balance of funds, we have reimbursement agreements with both Bureau of Land Management and Bureau of Reclamation. And Reclamation is in need of additional funds to continue the work that they're doing. Staff recommends the board commit an additional $500,000 towards the work that the Bureau of Reclamation is doing for this project. And this is my report.
Thank you, Joel. Good report. Joel, do the board have any questions or for Joel? Any discussion?
Comment, Mr. Chairman. I've been very impressed with the Bureau of
Hey, Jim,
Reclamation.
can you speak into the microphone, please?
I've been very impressed with the Bureau of Reclamation since they've taken that over and what they're doing to move it along instead of just keeping everybody stalled.
Good. Staff did make a recommendation for some additional funding for the Bureau of Reclamation to do their job. Any discussion on that?
Would you like me to make a motion, Mr. Chairman?
We would entertain a motion, yes.
I would move that the board commit $500,000 in additional funds to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for their continued work on the environmental impact statement for the Lake Powell Pipeline project.
I'll second it.
Okay, Jim made a motion, Kyle seconded it. Is there any discussion on or question on this motion? Okay, let's take a vote on it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it. Okay, next on our agenda, we're going to have a planning report, and Rachel Shilton will give that.
I will, and I'm just loading it now. Can you guys see that? And I'm going to move this down because usually I don't remember to. So this is a report on Senate Bill 52 from last year. It was submitted in the general session last year. There was some adaptations to it, and it was passed last year. Senator Andrade is the sponsor for this bill. And it required that irrigation companies who provide pressurized secondary water for lawn and garden were requested to submit a report to the Division of Water Resources about how many connections that would be and how much it would cost them to incorporate or to accomplish the secondary metering for those connections, for all connections, not just new connections. That report was due to the Division of Water Resources by the end of the year, last year. And again, it was only for pressurized secondary water that's provided to, for lawn and garden use. It did not include agriculture use. So at the end of the year, last year, well, I'm sorry, for the initial request for this, we sent out about 800 packets that were hard copies that were mailed to these water systems, and we sent an additional 500 emails out. And it was posted on our social media as well as the Rural Water website. So we used a couple of different avenues to reach those water systems. One of our challenges was we don't have a list of secondary water systems. So we pulled it from Water Rights Database, and we sent it to everybody, whether we knew that they were impacted by it or not. We didn't have any control over if those contact individuals were current or not. We did hear comments back from some water systems that said, you know, I got mine, but I know so-and-so didn't receive this mailing. So we don't really have a good idea about how to resolve that. It was a letter, the packet included a letter from both Water Rights and Water Resources, co-signature with those two parties. It included a plan form, a hard copy of that forms so that they knew what they would look for when they went to the website to fill it out online. And it included funding information from the funding that's available through Water Resources. This is a copy of the paper form that went out, and this is, if they went to the survey site, that is what they saw at the survey site. Initially, most of these fields were required, and so you could not submit the form unless you filled in each one of those cells. We did have some challenges with that. People weren't able to provide some of that information, and so the forms weren't submitted. We did correct that later in this process. We did get not a lot from sending out 1,300 notifications. We got fewer than 100 actual responses, either through the survey or through the paper copy. We did receive about 100, probably more than 100 phone calls as well. Many of those were water systems that only provided agriculture water, and so the report wasn't applicable to them, and so they did not submit a form, and we don't know how many additional just agriculture systems there are. This was an example of one of the completed forms. This one was complete, provided all of the information requested. This one is more typical of the paper forms that we received, where there were a lot of question marks, did not know how much it would cost, didn't know how much the cost per connection would be. Many of these smaller water systems just don't have that type of information in their records, and it's not accessible to them. Our estimate based on the responses that we did receive is that we're looking at least $500 million to accomplish this over whatever time period that is set for all systems to be metered. And we expect that would increase. Some of the concerns that were raised by the water systems were just that they can't separate it. These are small water systems, especially, that they provide lawn and garden water with the agriculture water that is provided to those owners or those shareholders, and they don't know how they would separate that use. It would require 2 meters after their diversion. They don't feel like there's a benefit to the metering for themselves. Many of the smaller companies said that this would bankrupt them, that they couldn't afford to do it, and it would close out their company. Many of the responses that we got were that they have a master meter, and that is sufficient. So those were the indications from the water response forms. From our staff in River Basin Planning, our feeling is that we should really focus our current efforts on the larger systems that primarily provide secondary water to residential urban use, and not focus on the smaller rural systems that provide primarily agriculture, secondary water, with access to it for lawn and garden use for those shareholders. Senator Andrick is sponsoring a bill again this session. It's Senate Bill 51 that is very similar to the bill that was passed last year and incorporates, again, requesting this report. It does not have a deadline on it, so it would be open all year and continue through that. And I think that's our report for secondary water. Do we have any questions?
Mr. Chair, just one caveat on the bill that's out there for this year is there is a category class exemption for counties of the 3rd class to the 6th class, so it would just be 1st and 2nd.
So, and that's all water systems in those counties?
That's in the bill that's proposed for this year. That's very similar to the 3rd substitute, I believe, from last year. So
help me out. I don't my mind's a little fuzzy on the one that was approved last year, Senate Bill 52.
Yes.
Was that just a 1 year, collect the data for the 1 year then, or is that an ongoing?
That one did have a deadline of December 31st, so it did require that metered secondary water be reported, and Water Rights has addressed that and has a form for secondary water that is on their website and that will be sent out. But the report part that was submitted to Division of Water Resources had the deadline of December 31st. The new bill includes that reporting with no deadline on it.
That would be potentially an annual type report, or it could be down the road.
This is me making an interpretation of a bill that hasn't passed. I don't think it's an annual report. I think it's an effort to get every water system, secondary water system, to report.
I remember one of the versions of the bills last year had an annual component in there for continually updating. So once meters start coming on 10%, 20%, 30% of your system, having just connections, then we'd have metered water use. So,
And that will show up in their annual reporting to Water Rights. As those meters come on, then it does get reported. The metered use does get reported to Water Rights.
That's part of the annual use
Yes,
with Water Rights.
yes.
Todd, you mentioned it only applies to counties of certain class. Which counties, which ones fall into which category?
it was first, I think it was 1 through 2 or 1 through 3, and that would be, the major ones along the Wasatch Front, as well as Washington County. St. George.
So all the other counties essentially would then be exempt?
At this point in time, yes.
With this version, of this potential version of Senate Bill 51. Right.
Okay. Any other further questions?
One other comment, I guess, and that is it exempts them from the reporting requirements. It doesn't exempt them from ability to apply for and pursue loans for secondary metering and such.
And wouldn't it also, it doesn't exempt them from having to fill out the water rights form, the annual water use form. This is just exempt them from that one-time report saying, here's where we're at. Okay, any other questions for Rachel? Any other discussion from the board on this? Thank you, Rachel. Good report. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now we're to the point of a historic moment. It is Todd's first director report. So, Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How do I follow that, man? This director's report will be short for a first director's report. First and foremost, I'm excited and honored to be leading and directing the division, working with you all. We have a great staff, and without our staff, we wouldn't be near as successful, or just to work with me. So it's an honor and a privilege. I'm learning tons. I'm learning a lot about the Colorado River, a lot about Lake Powell, a lot about all the things that the division's doing, which I did know, but we're learning tons. As we talked a little bit earlier, we're just getting ready to get into the legislative cycle. That starts on Monday, and the budget process, so we'll be watching that close. I'm glad to have a deputy director that's ready to take that on, and in transition, Jim Egbert, our financial manager, has really stepped up and helped us with fiscal notes and performance measures with the bills that are coming out, so thanks to Jim for help. With that, I think that's my report. Unless you know of anything else that you'd like to chat about, that's my report.
Thank you. Our next board meeting is scheduled for March 18th down at St. George. So that will entertain a motion to this meeting and won't reconvene until March 18th.
Move that we adjourn.
So be it. Thank you all for coming.